1980s and was the superintendent of Ireland's oldest golf course, the Royal Curragh, in 1993 to 2019, correctly. John has undertaken courses beginning with the basic grounds creeping at the Botanic Gardens in Dublin, the first honors degree in turf at Myers, UK. He also completed his PhD during 2016 in the turfgrass pathology in the Center for Biosciences at the University of England, Bristol. John has also conducted an independent research on turfgrass disease. In the last 15 years, the subject of microdochium nivalis, infection of turfgrass response, and the effect of phosphate treatments on disease suppression, turfgrass growth and quality as well. Focusing on primarily on biostresses in turfgrass, integrated disease control, and enhancement of turfgrass defense responses. John has presented results from his turfgrass research at numerous conferences and seminars in Ireland, France, Germany, Norway, US, Canada, Sweden, and the Czech Republic, and the GIS and the BTME. And we'd just like to say thank you for joining us at the PSG Turf Club today. So with that being said, Dr. Dempsey, I'll hand it over to you, and thanks again.
Thanks, Kyle. I'll just start sharing this screen here now.
Yeah, hey Kyle, tell your boss Quern there that he needs to get some better internet Wi-Fi there. You were breaking up a lot during that.
Yeah.
It's like the Taj Mahal there. He should be having the fastest Wi-Fi.
Well, hopefully mine is okay. Everyone can hear me fairly clearly.
Yeah, I think you're good, so you can start.
Okay, so anyway, this talk today was actually I first did it in the Czech Republic back in December, and I'm doing 3 talks out there for the Czech Greenkeepers winter conference. And actually, before I go on, if you get a chance to go to the Czech Republic, do, because it's a great place to see. But the greenkeepers out there are absolutely a fantastic crowd, so if you get the chance, go out there. So anyway, they asked me to do 3 talks, and they said, could you do one on your career? You know, and they actually came up with this title, Grasscutter to Scientist. So this is actually, today is actually a shortened version of it, because that went on for a couple of hours. But today we'll just do about 35, 40 minutes, I think it is. So let me just move on here with the, So what's the talk about? Well, it's fairly easy going today. There's nothing heavy in it. It's a light-hearted look, really, over 40 years of greenkeeping, of my career, basically. How I started in greenkeeping, what turfgrass management was like back in the last century, how things have changed over the years, how things have improved, you know, better equipment, better products, better methodologies. And then, you know, we're going to mention the challenges that we have today as well, the new challenges that we have to face up to. But key to all this of improving our turfgrass management, in my opinion, was education. Because there's no point in having good machines and good products if you don't know the best ways to use them. So education is key, in my opinion. And I'm going to talk about the road I had on my educational road, really, and how I got through it, and the value of continued learning. Non-stop learning is highly valuable, and it goes on. I'm 64 and I'm still learning. And then I'm just going to mention some of the trials and tribulations of doing a PhD and postgraduate work while you're still working full time. So there's quite a few challenges along that road, I can tell you. Hold on now till I just move my slides on. Actually, I have to use my mouse for this. So anyway, as Kyle was saying, I've been a greenkeeper since the early 1980s. And I didn't really want to be a greenkeeper, but there was a recession in Ireland at that time, and I found myself out of a job. So my grandfather, my father-in-law was a greenkeeper going back to the 1960s. And he got me a job at the Curragh, the Royal Curragh Golf Club. And it sort of became a family tradition then, because our son also trained there, and he's the superintendent at a golf course near Dublin. And our grandchildren have helped out on the course. So there's been 4 generations working on a golf course. So anyway, I was at the Royal Curragh the Royal Curragh actually is Ireland's oldest golf course. It was first established in 1852. So I was there until June of last year, when they decided that they no longer required a course superintendent, PhD or not. So we parted ways, and I've been doing research for many years, but now I'm a fully independent researcher, and I do research for various companies. Actually, whoever pays me, I do research for and give independent assessments. And I go around talking, giving presentations and getting paid to talk. So, for an Irish guy, getting paid to talk is like, it's a heavenly job. Simple as that. Anyway,
Hey, John, I have a question about,
yes.
we obviously were there the year before.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
The club let you go. What was I know you probably can't read into their mind, but what was their thought process? They didn't bring anybody in to manage the course now. It's just a crew, but no superintendent or greenkeeper?
It's a complicated issue, John, and really I shouldn't go any further into it in case there's further developments.
Say no more.
Okay, say no more is right. But, the minds of a golf club committee are fairly indelible, they're hard to read at times. But anyway, we won't go any further into that. But let me just move on and just give you a sort of a background to the actual area where the golf course is, because it's very interesting. It's what's called the Curragh, and it's an area southwest of Dublin in County Kildare. And it's an area of about 5,000 acres of open grassland. And it's been an open grassland since prehistoric times. So it has never been cultivated, it's never been built on. So it's a pure open grassland since Neolithic times and been grazed by sheep. And so that has led to a very interesting ecology there. It's various grasses. Actually, it's world renowned for its selection of fungi. So I have to get Mike Fidanza over there sometime, because he would love it there. So it's just an open grassland, very interesting ecology wise, but also archaeology, a huge amount of history there. Because if you think, that has been there since, for thousands of years with no development on it. So all the historical sites are still there. An example would be our 6th tee box at the Royal Curragh. There's a circular grass depression all around that. And that actually is what's called a burial rath, going back to Neolithic times. And speaking of history, here's something now. Myself and my father-in-law were doing some drainage back in the 80s. And we found these two stones, which seemed to fit together. And we had the National Museum people came down and examined them. This was just near the maintenance area on the golf course. And they found out they were what's called a saddle and quern rubber. So these were two stones which were used 3,500 BC, they reckon they were being used to grind corn or cereals. And so that's the sort of a thing you find around the course, all these archaeological sites. If we did any construction work on the golf course, for example, we had to have an archaeologist on site constantly. Some more recent history is this. This is a photograph actually from the 1800s, so it's a very old photo. And, really good quality for the time. This hill where the tents are, this is the leading down to what's the first fairway now, the Royal Curragh. And, interestingly for me, if you see the trees and the skyline there, and that road in the center winding up, they're still there, and they're still very clearly visible. But if you look at the circular tents, I think that's around the 1850s as well, just before the golf course was established. Those tents were on the side of the hill. And if you look at this photo from the back of the first green now, looking up towards the clubhouse, if you look up the hill, hopefully you can just see those circular indentations. And that's where the tents were, and they're still there. So a lot of history. And just one more little piece of history before I move on to the main course for today. This is more recent history. These are trenches, right, they're down around our 5th and 6th holes. As you walk down the pathway to the 5th fairway, these trenches are there. And they were put in 1915 and 1916 for the recruits from the army camp next to the golf course. So the recruits would train there and then they would have been sent to the Battle of the Somme or into the First World War. So, you know, that gives you something to think about if you have a bad shot going down the fifth, that, you know, your problems are fairly slight when you think of what these guys had to go through. So, you know, all in all, it was a pretty historical place, interesting place, archaeology-wise and ecology-wise to work on. So that's just a little bit of background. I'm just going to go back now to the main thing now. What actually was golf maintenance like back in the last century in Ireland? So we're talking about 1980, 1981, 82, when I started there. And here's the thing, right? I can remember clearly walking onto a green for the first time. And this is what I can clearly remember this saying, wow, how beautiful and soft and springy this is. It's like walking on a mattress. So, you know, when you're thinking of golf greens, it's not the sort of a thing you like to think of. But really, you know, in those days, there was hardly any equipment. Aeration and top dressing were not very commonplace. They weren't carried out that often. And so a lot of problems with thatch at the time. And other factors actually contributed to this, which I'll show you now. So this is, remember now, the early 80s. We had very low levels of equipment. Now, not quite that bad, or not quite that bad either, but fairly basic. And turf management operations were fairly sparse. We had low levels of staff. We had no information, no knowledge at the time, and poor advice. So we actually had one of these here. This was a Thesis pedestrian slitter. I can remember doing the greens with that. You know, you'd walk behind that, and then you'd walk behind it to the next green. So the greens, if you got a run of that every once or twice a year, you were going well. And that was the only aeration at that time. Now, top dressing was another matter. This is what the advice we were given. We were top dressing with a screen topsoil. So basically, we're putting out fine clay particles and brushing them in with birch twigs into you know, soil-based push-up greens. So pretty much sealing the surface. So like I'm just saying there, you know, low levels of maintenance. And that was the case except for fertilization. So we had POA-dominated greens, push-up greens in Ireland's climate, which is perfect for grass growth almost year-round. And this is the nutritional input we had. This is the amount of nitrogen that was going out in the very early 80s upon advice. 450 kgs per hectare per year. That's around, I did a conversion there for you guys in the States, around 9 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So a big amount of nitrogen going out, no aeration, and clay top dressing. So, you know, it didn't make a decent menu for good greens, I'm afraid, at the time. So as I said, that was the early 80s. So our maintenance procedures then, when I started, would have been mowing greens. Now, we did actually have a ride-on mower, a Toro GM3, I think it was. And we had a Massey Ferguson tractor and a gang mower. And that was about all the equipment we had. So pretty basic maintenance levels, I'm afraid, at the time. Oh yes, and I'll tell you now, we had some dry patch one time, and we were advised to go out to the nearest shop and buy some washing up liquid. Now I can almost visualize Stan Koska there now with his hands over his face at this, using washing up liquid on our greens. But anyway, you know, revolution hadn't been invented in them days. Okay. So anyway, that was the very early days. But by the end of the 80s and into the 90s, things began to change. We started to learn, and we started to read, and we started to get education. This is when I started on my first foray into turfgrass education. It was a City and Guilds greenkeeping course, and this was in the College of Amenity Horticulture. And it was a fantastic place to visit because it was in the Botanic Gardens in Dublin. And this is when I started first learning about the basics and what's involved in correct turf management. So we started to improve things. We started to buy equipment. Late 80s, early 90s, we had a Cushman, and we had the tools then to go with it. We started, we had an aerator, a slitter, which attached to it. We had a conveyor type top dresser, and we changed from obviously from clay top dressing to sand of the correct particle distribution. So things were looking to improve. We changed our fertilization program. We reduced N inputs. That's the slice of slitter that we had. It's still up there, I think, actually, which went behind the Cushman. So aeration increased. If I was in the room there, which is now to giving the talk, I'd be asking you to put your hands up to the younger guys anyway and have a figure out what this particular piece of equipment is here. Actually, it always reminded me of a mine you'd see in the World War II films. It was actually a holocorn machine, which went back behind the Cushman, and it would collect cores into the drum. You can make it out there, and then you could go away and deposit the collected cores. So it was okay. It was an improvement on nothing. But if you notice, the tines are about a maximum 2 inches. But that's the sort of thing. We started to improve the aeration. As I said, we altered our nutritional program, reduced our N inputs, started taking soil samples, and things really began to firm up. The greens started to firm up, they started to smooth out, they started to play well, and people enjoyed playing on them. And I don't mean like that either. They enjoyed playing golf on them. So anyway, that was the 90s. Into the 2000s, again, we kept improving, we kept learning. Good products started to come on the market. As you can see there, some of them even had research to back them up. We started getting good machines. We started to improve the presentation to a sort of a standard that was become recognizable today. And all these improvements, the machinery, products, and the education started to make an impact on what we were doing. So we're into the 21st century. We got into over the 2000 mark. And while we improved our game, started to improve the presentation and the playing qualities of the swords, the golfer expectations improved as well, or increased. They wanted, certainly in Ireland and the UK, golfers wanted good playing surfaces, not only in the summer months, but year round. Obviously with our climate, we have golf, and we have playing golf competitions right through the year, through December, January. There's always golf going on. So golfers wanted better and improved surfaces year round. So actually, I didn't really want to mention the Augusta effect, seeing as it's supposed to be starting today. And I know John Kaminsky is very disappointed he's not there. So we'll just skip over that. But golfers did want the Augusta effect more and more. So our workloads increased. But that's not a problem because, one thing you do learn in this business, that no matter what you do, there's always new challenges and new targets to set for yourself, and there's always ways to improve. Now today, as we go into 2020, we have many new problems that we have to deal with. We have, certainly here in Europe, we have severe restrictions on plant protectants. We've no contact fungicides. Other fungicides like systemics are being severely restricted. Herbicides are being cut back. We have no controls for chafers or leather jackets. Worm casting, no controls there. So plenty of challenges for us to deal with, and certainly the greenkeepers and course managers and all turf professionals are rising to that challenge and coming up with all sorts of new methodologies to fight off these restrictions. Environmental issues. Now, I'm not saying this is a problem, but certainly back in the 80s, we didn't think much about the environment. It didn't give us a second thought to put out stuff such as chlordane to control worms, which would last in the soil for 7 or 8 years. But certainly nowadays, all we as turf managers and turfgrass professionals, we no longer see the environment as a problem, but we see it as a duty and an honor for us to enhance and sustain what the areas that we're proud to look after. So the environmental issues are there, and we're rising to that challenge and looking after the environment in whatever way we can. And Climate change, yes, we have to deal with that as well. And that's certainly happening, because certainly here in Ireland, in the last 3 to 4 years, we've had a couple of subtropical storms, tropical in Ireland. We've had some severe winter weather. We've had a very hot and dry summer. We've had a very wet summers. So there's certainly more extreme weather that turf managers have to deal with these days. And this is something now as well. And this other point here has come to the fore in the last couple of years, is that, you know, the pressures that golf managers are under can have very severe effects on the lifestyle, on the well-being, mental well-being. So this is something that's come up a lot lately, and this is another challenge that we have to talk about and deal with. So that's sort of the quick outlook of changes over the last few years, going from very basic greenkeeping, where in the early 80s we were regarded as agricultural labourers, basically, certainly over this end of the Atlantic. And we've moved on through education, through the way we've dealt with our problems, to become, you know, proper turfgrass professionals. But this is something now, if I was in the room again with you guys, I'd be asking you to put your hands up and make suggestions as to what has been the biggest impact on golf course maintenance over the years. Actually, I put this out on Twitter last year sometime, and I got a whole load of answers and opinions from guys. And you know what? I could tell the age of the respondent by what they were saying was the biggest impact on course maintenance. A lot of the guys from my generation would be coming up with stuff like this. Equipments, for me, for example, would have been ride-on mowers. Now you might think, geez, ride-on mowers, but no, I mean, when I started out, we had a mower, ride-on mower for the tees, sorry, for the greens only. But certainly the chap that worked with me, who started in the 1950s and only retired 6 years ago, when he was mowing greens in the 60s, he was actually using a push mower. I don't mean one that you just walk behind, I mean one that you actually push, had no engine on it. So they were using push mowers to mow greens. But ride-on mowers, not only for greens, but for tees, and of course for fairways, they've come online and made a huge impact on the presentation of the course. Verti-drains and Procore type aerators, you know, Procore or the John Deere aerators, huge impact on the quality of our turfgrass swards here, being able to aerate in various methods and getting the results that you want. Again, a huge impact on maintenance. Now here's something now that really I loved, spinning disc top dressers. I mean, anyone, again, I'd be asking you out there, put your hand up, anyone that has top dressed 18 greens with a shovel, because it's hard going, I can tell you. So these spinning disc top dressers were a godsend, I have to say. Not only for saving your back, but for getting out regular light top dressings and really firming up and smoothing off and improving your root zones. Again, a godsend there, they were. And of course, sprayers. Again, you know, we started out, we had 200 litre, which is what, 60 gallon agricultural sprayers on the back of a tractor. So, you know, not great calibrations with them, and constantly hearing problems when after you sprayed greens from golfers, what's all the wheel marks? So these integrated, dedicated sprayers have made a huge difference as well. So that's just some of the things I would have picked out as improvements to the course. Product-wise, you know, foliar fertilizers. Like I say, when we started off, it was just granulars really, and you put out your granular fertilizer, you had this peak and trough of growth up and down through the year. With foliars now we can, and with proper soil and foliar analysis, you can target exactly the plant's requirements. Using MLSN, if you're using that, you can know exactly what has to go out, get it out nice and regular, exact calibrations. So again, foliar fertilizer is a big plus for me over the years. PGRs, plant growth regulators, managing POA greens in Ireland, yes, big difference. But what I found actually even more benefits for me certainly was managing fairways, because when you have low levels of staff, not able to mow green or mow fairways as regular as you might like, we're going to get a lot of clumping, a lot of grass being left behind. So PJRs and fairways made a huge difference in their, not only their density and quality of the sward, but in the presentation as well. Seed heads are present. Yeah, Poa greens, seed heads are present. Goes without saying. Big advantage as well. Wetting agents, yes, it's much better now than washing up liquid. The quality and the use of wetting agents over the years have really helped.
I think we lost you for 1 second, but we're back now.
Okay, I'm back on, am I?
Yeah, I think I had a question though. You were mentioning
Yes.
the PGRs. What PGRs do you have over there that you can use?
Well, Primo Max, the Trinixapac Ethyl is
Okay.
really, that's
it,
all
right?
we have. Yeah, but certainly a big improvement over, in the last since 1980s, definitely. Seed head suppressants, they're not actually labeled for use here, so we'll just skip over that. Okay. I mentioned wetting agents, much better than washing up liquid. Stand there nodding his head. And of course, phosphate. I actually have a contract with myself that no matter what talk I do, I have to mention phosphate at some stage. But anyway, like I said, when I did this sort of poll or this question on Twitter, I could tell the age of the respondents. I'd say guys like me would pick all the stuff there on the left of the screen. And then the younger guys were coming in with stuff, like GPS sprayers. Great, yes, that's definitely. Robot mowers. Okay, Erwin, how are you going there? The Erwinator in Germany's nodding his head. Robot mowers are going to be the big thing the next couple of years, I think. Rolling, the dedicated rollers for green speed, smoothness, and of course, the disease suppression. Moisture meters, like the TDR and the POGO. Again, precise measurement of your moisture levels and targeting of your irrigation. And of course, nothing else, moisture meters. So they're all stuff that, they weren't really available in the early 80s when I started. So these have all added to our arsenal of our tasks and the way we manage turf over the years. But when I did that poll, all those things came up. But one thing no one mentioned, and there's no point in having, like I said earlier on, there's no point in having all this great equipment, these great products, and these great methodologies, unless you actually know how to use them. So for me, over the last 40 years, education has been one of the biggest improvements and caused the biggest impact on our profession, I think. I'm just going to skip on this. And actually, I was asked, the thing came up on Twitter again, a couple of years ago now, this hashtag, anyone can cut grass. And a professor in Trinity College in Dublin asked me to do a piece for his blog. And I did. And it was picked up then by various magazines around the place, such as the Golf Course Industry and a couple of the British magazines as well. And basically what I was saying was, to the people outside the business, what does a turfgrass manager do? And I pointed out to them that a manager is fully responsible for a multi-million dollar asset. It could be a golf course, soccer stadium, cricket grounds, rugby, Olympic venues, and and to produce the quality playing surfaces, you have to know the science behind the what's required. And I pointed out in this particular thing, we have to have an understanding of plant biology and physiology, soil science, turfgrass species, cultivation, drainage, irrigation, machinery management, personnel management, which is very tricky, and of course, pests and diseases. So a lot of people outside the industry, just didn't realize what was involved. And education is the key to, I think, producing really quality playing surfaces. So where do you start? What do you do? So I'm going to go through what I did. And you saw earlier that one of my first courses I did was this certificate in sports turf management. Fairly basic, but it covers all what you required if you're working on a golf course. I then went on, I did what's called a foundation degree. I'm not sure what you call it over in the States, probably some sort of a 2-year program maybe. And then went on and did my honours degree in turfgrass science, BSc honours it's called. Now you can go and do a master's after that. I went straight in and did a PhD in plant pathology. Now all that actually there was done while I was working full time, which was tricky enough. And the key for me to be able to do that while I was working, of course, was that, you know, from the 2000s, a lot of these courses became available online. Here we go. Hold on. Yeah. And most of the universities, a lot of colleges now can provide online delivery, such as the Penn State World Campus. Now, I did my degree in the UK at Myerscough College, did my honours degree there, and then that's it there. I did there in the UK in your final year. I'm not sure about the States, but in your final year in the UK, you do a research project. This was my first foray into sort of proper scientific research. So I did a project on phosphate, on its effect on growth and disease susceptibility in creeping bentgrass. And I found this really interesting. Really, I loved it, in fact. And it involved me going away from the golf course into other areas. So I had to figure out, for example, how to grow grass in a greenhouse. And they're actually 4-inch sewer pipes, which I cut up into 12-inch depth, same depth as the root zone. And we had to grow creeping bentgrass in the greenhouse there and apply our treatments, of course, and assess what was going on. So this was the start of my research career. And I had to do other things. I had to figure out how to cut the grass in those little pots. And I tried various things, like that was a hair cutter, didn't work. Didn't work too well on the hair either by the looks of it. I then tried things like shears, cut the grass okay, but I needed to be able to collect it properly. So I ended up, by trial and error, using the scissors. And I could cut the grass and it'd land on a piece of paper, and then I could carry out whatever analysis I wanted to do. So that was sort of all new stuff for me. As you can see, we got some pretty interesting results from that first bit of research project. And we had that good. In fact, the college sent it in, and I was invited to present the research and the findings at the European Turfgrass Society in France back in 2010. So, you know, that's me. I was gone from sort of an agricultural worker on a golf course a couple of years back to get an invitation to go and talk to all these people in France. So that was really, I thought this is brilliant. I thought this is great. Met a lot of people there. It was quite intimidating for me. Now, normally I don't get nervous doing talks anymore. I was slightly nervous that time, all right, because I was there talking to people whose work I had I cited in the dissertation. I think there's about 200 to 300 people there, some famous people. John Kaminsky was there. So yeah, nothing. Yeah, that's enough said there. Anyway, so that was my first foray into research, and I really enjoyed it, and it really sort of spurred me on then to go further. So then I went on, and I decided to try and do a PhD, and I ended up doing a PhD in plant pathology at the University of the West of England. Now, one of the main reasons I did this, the main reason actually was my personal challenge. I didn't do it because I wanted to get a different job or into academia. It was a personal challenge. And it was a research PhD, looked at suppression of mycodocium by phosphate in cool season turf grasses. And, you know, what's involved in that? Well, I had to see whether phosphate could actually suppress mycodocium navale infection. And if it did, I had to try and figure out what was the means of suppression and what other effects phosphate might have, because, you know, just because something suppresses disease, you have to make sure that it doesn't actually kill the grass as well. Just, you don't want to be saying, well, there's no disease, but there's no turf grass either. So we had to carry out a whole range of different field trials and laboratory studies. And just to give you an example of what I had to do, we ran field trials for 4 years. Now, actually, you know, doing this part-time and managing the golf course was for this particular section was an advantage, because I had a hectare of land which I could put in some trial areas. So if I was full-time at the university in the middle of Bristol, that would have been a bit tricky. So we ran field trials for 4 years. Again, we got some good results showing suppression of microdocium with that particular phosphate. We also then had to, as I say, we had to figure out the means of suppression. Was it a directed phosphate directly inhibit the growth of the pathogen? Did it stimulate the plant defenses? What? So again, we had to do a lot of lab work. We had to grow microdocium on plates and see how the various compounds affected its growth. We had to look at the infection process of microdocium in turfgrass and to assess whether or not this product could actually enhance or stimulate the defense responses. So we had to look at things like total phenolic compounds and hydrogen peroxide. So we used processes such as spectrophotometry and fluorescence microscopy. This was all new stuff to me. I had to learn all this.
Hey, John, is that all autofluorescent stuff, or did you do any transformation of the pathogens?
We used various compounds, dyes and stains to enhance the fungal cell walls. And then, using UV fluorescence, we could actually clearly see the, I'll just bring it back there. You can see the fungal structures here in this one, I think, can you?
Yep.
Yeah, so that was a good way to look at the infection process. Yeah, so again, how am I going for time there? Ah, yeah, not too bad. So this was all new stuff to me, all very interesting, and but had some problems as well. But like I said, we looked at the defense responses. We also had to look at the way phosphate was taken up in plants and what happens when you apply it to the leaf. And, I said to one of the companies that provided phosphates, an American company, I said, what happens when you apply phosphate? Well, they said, we assume it's taken up the same as, other foliar applied nutrients. So here's a clue now, or here's a bit of a hint now for all you students there, right? If you use the word assumed in your PhD thesis, you can assume you're going to rewrite it, okay? So you have to know exactly, right? Am I right, John?
Yes, I would say that you're right.
Yeah. So, no point in assuming anything. So you have to know exactly what was going on. So we had to devise a method to not only measure phosphate ion, but to separate it from the phosphate ion in the plant. So we used a process from Australia, which was used on their native trees called using high-performance ion chromatography. And we changed that and we used it on our turf grasses. Again, just a snapshot of what we did. This, for example, we applied phosphate to the leaf here at 0 times. We saw a rapid uptake into the leaf and then a gradual reduction as the leaf was reduced over the 6-week period. We also saw we saw that phosphate was actually translocating into the roots as well. So that's just a snapshot. We did a lot of work in that area. So that's a process we had to adapt and use. So all new stuff for me, interesting stuff. We had to see whether phosphate, what effects it had as a biostimulant. Does it provide phosphorus nutrition to turf grasses? So again, we had to set up an experiment and do another chapter in the thesis. This particular experiment here looked at phosphate application to Lolium perenniae and Poa annua, growing in 2 different root zones, low P and a sufficient amount of P. And again, very briefly, what we found there was that applying phosphate to turfgrass in a P deficient root zone actually represses deficiency responses. So you're actually doing more damage by applying phosphate in a low P situation. But in a normal phosphorus root zone, we actually got a stimulation of growth. Again, another interesting point there. So we did all that research, looking at various aspects, I think about 6 chapters. And at the end of that, what you do is you have to produce a thesis. Mine was about 400 pages. The main body was about 300 here. And there's another 100 then in a separate volume of statistical analyses. So you produce a thesis. What else do you do? That's it there, actually, nice and thick. Let's get it done in a hard copy. Well, apart from you're encouraged to obviously to produce and communicate your work. So there's a lot of conferences you have to attend to get communicate your research. Conference proceedings are published. You also have to try and publish in peer-reviewed journals. You have to attend a lot of modules in the classroom. And again, due to online delivery, I was able to attend all them in Ireland while still working. So at the end of the day, it's a lot of work, about 5 or 6 years, 24/7 basically. You know, you're working on the golf course, you go home in the evening and you're working away on your PhD, various research projects. So working full time and doing a PhD, there's quite a few unique problems that you have to, or a few challenges you have to overcome. So time management is crucial. Obviously, a lot of time is spent on it. You have to make sure you don't procrastinate too much. You can procrastinate a little bit, but not too much. For me, the laboratory work was tricky because I just couldn't afford to spend 2 or 3 months in the UK at the university. So how I overcame that was I actually purchased and I scrounged various pieces of equipment from the university and set up my own lab here at home. You can probably see it in the background if you're looking at my webcam shot. So I had my own lab here and I adjusted the research then to suit whatever laboratory equipment I had. I'll show you more of that in a minute. And there's the equipment, yeah. As I say, I could do classroom modules online, like we are today. I could participate in many of the teaching modules that we had to attend. But one big drawback, in my opinion, was that I had no interaction really with other students or faculty staff. So there's no such thing as going down in the morning for a cup of coffee and chatting away or start giving out about your professors or talking about what other people are doing. So working away from university part-time with postgraduate work is very, very isolated, in fact. There's not many people around you can talk about total phenolic content within and that, without getting a funny look. So that was a big drawback there. There was some other funny aspects to it as well. I mean, at one stage, I had a couple of weeks to spare and I was able to go and do some work in the university labs, but it entailed putting in 120 pots of 4-inch pots of turfgrass in the car, back of the car, taking the ferry over to England and driving down with all this grass in it. That wasn't too bad. But while I was at the university, I mentioned I have my own little lab here at home. So while I was there, I would stock up on various chemicals I needed, things like sodium chlorate, titanium oxysulfate. That meant actually traveling back over the ferry and through Irish customs with all these little plastic bags of white powder, which was a bit tricky. Lucky enough, we weren't really stopped. So I hadn't explained that one. Figuring out the processes, like I say, when you're away from the university, you can't just nip down to some of the other labs and see what's going on. So I had to figure out a lot of the processes I was carrying out, and I found YouTube was very handy. Basic stuff like using the pipette. I learned how the best ways to use an analog spectrophotometer. I learned a lot of my statistical analysis stuff on YouTube and online. Self-taught on that, so there's a lot of stuff there, a lot of good stuff available there. If you can't get in to talk to your professors or your tutors, too handy. There's another thing. A lot of the research, a lot of the lab work I did involved collecting grass cuttings and processing them, doing extracting phenolic content, like I was saying, or extracting hydrogen peroxide from various processes. That involves drying grass and grinding it up finely. So I used to do that here, and grinding up grass I found very tricky. I tried various things such as the herb grinder out of the kitchen, and that didn't work too well. So I had to end up going to what's called a head shop. I'm not sure whether you have them in the US. Basically, it's a place that has all this drug paraphernalia. Man, okay. So I went into this place in the local town, actually had a bag of dried grass with me. And I said, look, I need something that'll grind this up pretty fine. Okay, man, he says that you're in the right place here. And I got my little tool for grinding it up. And That's just, just an example of you have to think outside the box sometimes when you're on your own. So that worked pretty good. And of course, around the house here, there's, no matter what cupboard or drawer you looked into at that time, there was sort of microdocium growing everywhere in the dark. That's the home lab there, which I found very useful. Things like this fluorescent microscope, where we could look at the infection processes very clearly, microdocium growing. We could also use it to look at some defense responses in turf grasses using various stains. This is an old analog spectrophotometer, very old, but it certainly did the job. I used that for a lot of the work as well. And this is the famous grass grinder, which I would recommend to anyone if you want to grind grass up, strictly for scientific use, of course. So that was a lot of work over the years, 6 years near enough of non-stop research and writing and all sorts of stuff. But did it have any value? I mean, like I said to you, I did this for personal challenge. But in the UK, they have what's called, in the universities, they have this impact case studies, where they assess all the various researches and assign sort of value to it. And they gave mine a 3-star case, and they reckoned they had national and international reach and impact in terms of significance. So that was very rewarding, I have to say, to get. So a lot of work, I said, but a lot of gratification as well. I mean, sometimes people would ask you, do you need all this study? I mean, okay, do a certificate in grass, it's enough, surely. But no, I would say, first of all, the more you learn, the better. But certainly, in my opinion, first of all, you get the understanding of the science involved in turfgrass. But what it will do, it will give you the ability and the confidence to interact with agronomists, with other scientists, with your employers and your turfgrass companions. Before that, you're very much, as I said, regarded as agricultural workers. But nowadays, we're turfgrass professionals, and we have to be able to interact with confidence worldwide with anyone you meet in the business. Oh, I'm getting an echo there. Anyway, as well as learning all the science, doing postgraduate work, such as a master's or PhD, you will develop a lot of transferable skills. You'll learn about communications, time management. You will certainly learn how to prioritize various aspects of your work. You will be able to critically analyze any problems that you come up against. And of course, part of the communication, you learn how to write and express yourselves very clearly, hopefully. And if you're very lucky, whatever you're working on sometimes in research, you might influence how others start managing golf courses, which is another bonus. So would I actually recommend this academic approach to other turfgrass managers? Yeah, sure, of course. Apart from seeing all the positives I mentioned a minute ago, it's very stimulating. And you get great satisfaction, a lot of positives, a lot of great memories came back, and a lot of opportunities came for me, like this. I mean, if I hadn't done my PhD and done the research, I wouldn't have got to meet people like Dr. Mike Fidanza and getting my Penn State mug. That was a big thing for me. Penn State, for those in the industry over the last 40 years, Penn State turfgrass was one of the pinnacles of education. So that was a big day for me, getting that. Get a lot of look at all these people we've met over the years. Lots and lots of friends we've made worldwide, other scientists, people, researchers, greenkeepers worldwide. Actually, way too many to mention. But loads and loads of greenkeepers were all around the world, and a lot of good friends made just because I'd ventured further into education. I got the opportunity to talk and present places like BTME in Harrogate, Saltex, GIS, Quebec, Canada, Czech Republic, Sweden, loads of places, all because I decided I'd keep moving on and keep educating. That's just some of the places we got to see. Up there at the top left is the famous Clifton Bridge, one of the first suspension bridges ever built. Quebec in the middle, Copenhagen, Niagara Falls. got to see the Liberty Bell, which is great. Penn, where was it? Philadelphia. So all from further education. What's the take-home message from today is this, right? You know, turf grass management, as you can see from the 1980s, it's always changed and always evolving, and there's always new challenges, and we have to continuously be prepared for this, and education is the key to it, basically. So there's always scope for improvement, and there's always new challenges, new areas to research. And what I would say to you young guys out there, certainly on starting off in education, there's nothing that you can't do. Because you know what? If an old guy from the outback of Kildare here in Ireland can do it, absolutely nothing stopping you guys in this day and age. That's me on Twitter, and that's to the end of it now. I've gone over about 55 minutes, so hopefully you enjoyed that little ramble through time and it wasn't too boring for you. So I'll hand you back now to John. Maybe some more questions or comments there.
We do have a question in here. Charles asked, he said, besides Penn State, what other online universities are popular for students that want to study turfgrass in the UK? Do you know of any other online?
Online? No. Well, obviously, the other US states have some, all right. But I think Penn is the pinnacle, really, like I said, because, you know, it always was one of the leading targets for education. Now, the Microscope in the UK will do degree programs as well, and I think Elmwood in the UK. But apart from that, no, I think Penn State would be the leading one, all right.
I think that Auburn might have a master's. They did. I don't know if they still do. I know that some of my students are Tennessee. I don't know if they have one, but there are some other online resources. I'm not exactly sure the scope of them. But somebody else had questions. Someone said, where do you see the profession going? How does technology and practices help us? More and more places are adopting artificial turf. Where do you see that going? So a lot of questions in there. So.
Well, I can't see artificial turf going in much further. I mean, there's a lot of problems coming up in the last couple of years with it. Technology, well, we see it here today. You know, it's instant communications, and you see it with social media. You can put a problem you might have. You can put it up on Twitter, and within seconds, you're having suggestions and help from around the world. Webinars such as this, education is really taken off. I mean, I've done quite a few. Worldwide. Well, unfortunately, I get to stay home. I mean, I did a couple for people like the Spanish greenkeepers and Portuguese, and they're in lovely, warm climates, enjoying themselves. I was stuck at home, so there's some disadvantages to online work, I can tell you.
Yeah, for sure. Kurt asked, do you miss being a superintendent? Greenkeeper?
No.
That was a pretty quick, short.
Well, you know what? Well, you know, I've seen some photos lately of golf courses, and yes, I do miss being part of that. But when I did finish in June of last year, it struck me straight away that, you know, when you're a superintendent, you're thinking of the job 24/7. And it is a lot of pressure there. And as any superintendent will know, no matter what you do, there's always a problem coming up, and there's always experts who know better than you. Yeah, we won't go there. No, I miss it slightly, but not much. No, I'm enjoying what I'm doing now. You know, this stuff here. So I did it for nearly 40 years. So
Deborah's got a question. I think she's ribbing you a little bit. She asked if you ever surveyed what nematodes you had, and then said sorry she couldn't resist.
What did she say?
She said, did you ever survey what nematodes you had?
No, I did not. I don't like them. They're creepy oaks. I know Deborah Cox is actually an expert on nematodes. So she's very if you're online, it's worth following her, I have to say. So watch that space there.
Cameron, who's a PhD student, my former master's student, he said, what are the backgrounds of most of the other greenkeepers at courses in Ireland? Is it a lot of School of Hard Knocks or more formal education?
Well, okay, up to, let's say, 5 years ago, I would say, maybe a little bit longer, very, very few golf course managers in Ireland or in the UK would have a degree. It's only in the last, certainly in the last 10 years, degrees have come on. So mostly the background of greenkeepers is experience and some courses, some basic courses. So, but it certainly it's coming to the fore now. It's coming almost compulsory now that you have to have a degree to be a course manager.
Is that coffee in there that you're drinking at 7 o'clock
No,
at night?
it's actually I don't know what. It's some sort of fruit juice.
Oh.
I'm sorry I haven't got my Penn State mug here. Should have.
That's all right. Fernando's not in here, so he won't get mad at you. So.
Well, actually, that the camera is actually sitting on that. So.
Somebody else had a question that we can continue that says, does online education create issues for students who want to grow in the industry? I'm an online adult learner, and it's always a question I have in the back of my mind. So,
does it what? Have a problem?
Yeah, it says, does it create issues for students who want to grow in the industry? I think it's the opposite. I think that, if online education is the best option you have, not everybody has the ability to pick up and go to some place and do schooling. I think any extra education is going to be beneficial. So I can't see it being a problem.
No. Well, I wouldn't be here talking to you if it wasn't for online education. I'd be watching The Simpsons or something.
That's not bad. I'm getting ready to go watch Narcos or something, but I don't see any other questions in there, and I don't want to, we might have one more. Let me see. I don't want to stop it. So Stan Koska said, what is the scope of research and technical support competency in Ireland? There's Dr. Cox, you, and who else? So what is the scope of research and technical support going on? Also, who does it at STRI? Ruth Mann, she does a lot of technical work and trials, right?
Oh, the STRI do a lot of research in the UK. Yes, they've but in Ireland there is a research facility near us here in County Wicklow, ISTI. They carry out research. They've large trial plots there, but basically there's nothing else really.
Dr. Entwistle, I know Kate does some stuff too.
Kate does some work, yeah.
So can you do trial work like that? I mean, could you do, if you had land or enough greenkeepers that'll give up space, could you do trial work?
I've done a lot of trial work. I can still do it. Yes, I have plenty of contacts. So contact me for any trial work and I'll give you.
I guess that means someone's looking for some trial work to bring in a little bit of extra cash.
Not only do I have trial work, I have my greenhouse area, which I can do work in, and my lab as well. So, yeah, as they used to say, if the price is right, I can do it. Right.
Stan Koska is correcting me or somebody else. He said the Republic of Ireland is not the UK.
So
I wasn't trying to say that if I did, but I apologize.
Stan, you're a troublemaker.
he is. He's trying to cause trouble. Well, we hit the hour mark. I think it's a good time to end it. Kyle, I'm going to turn it over to you, let you kind of wrap it up for the Turf Club and thank our speaker and everyone for attending.
All righty. I just want to say thank you, Dr. Dempsey and Dr. Kaminsky for putting this together. I think we had 29 participants at most. I think that was
pretty good.
That was right. Normally it's a Turf Club meeting, but we're just want to say thank you again and hope everybody's doing well wherever you guys are listening from. And thank you for attending these. It's hopefully we can keep these going throughout the month. And Dr. Dempsey, thank you again for taking time out of your day, out of your night to join us over in the United States. So,
do you know what?
That being said, thank you.
We've been locked up here for the last few weeks, so it's great to talk to someone.
I understand that. And I think we have a few more of these coming up. I think we have 2 next week and 2 the week after also that we'll have people on. And we might have a couple more scheduled the week after that. But I think these are good, just something to get out there and try and get some of our online students to participate and anybody else like Stan and Deborah and anyone else. That,
yes, it'd be great.
All right, we're going to end the presentation, but thank you very much again, everybody, and enjoy, stay safe, ride out this storm as long as we need to.
Thanks very much for having me there, I have to say. It's been a great honor, actually, to be asked to talk to Penn State, so thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.